Welcome to today's video, where we're mostly going to be talking about Vampire, which right now in TCA is really stupid, and is probably going to continue to be stupid if some things aren't changed. Today is a pretty laid-back video where we're just going to talk about some things, and I'm just going to tell you right now up front that if you don't like math, then you're really going to want to just tune out the video, pay attention to the background, and yeah, if you don't, you're gonna get a headache just like I did while trying to make the video in question. But anyways, Vampire, the spec that I think is pretty clearly the meta right now in TCA. We see a lot of Vampire users, and for good reason. I mean, if you're using a time manipulation stand, as it is right now, you can freeze them and then they get screwed at the end of it. Something that I know is gonna get changed, but hey, it's here right now and it's contributing to the problems. But I suppose Vampire Freeze is actually a pretty decent way to start because, well, it's stupid. No shit, if you've been playing for any amount of time, you've probably noticed that Vampire Freeze is hands down the most obnoxious thing to fight when it comes to Vampire. The freeze comes out incredibly fast, for some reason has hyper armor, something that I think is getting removed, I hope is getting removed. And the most obnoxious thing is that while you're frozen, your hitbox and your model for hitboxes doesn't update, but it shows that it is. So if the opponent just walks behind you, you're completely unable to hit them and cancel any attacks they have. This means that if somebody freezes you, which isn't particularly hard considering that if you get into an M1 trade and don't dodge out or use a counter, they hit this for free, it automatically gives the opponent a true block break if they have one, and they do, because Space Ripper is a block break, and you have that all the time. So you get damaged no matter what, you can't not. Unless of course you have a counter, but if you screw that up, then you're gonna take a boatload of damage because the end lag takes forever. So basically, stupid easy to land, pretty difficult to screw up, it's just ridiculous. But the thing is, as much as I would like to sit here and tell you that vaporization freezing is just ridiculously overpowered, I actually don't feel like it's that overpowered. Vampire as a spec isn't overpowered because specifically vaporization freeze, it's just that vaporization freeze heavily contributes. The thing is that other than vaporization freeze, the only other move you have that's even remotely decent is Space Ripper. This move is really good, and I probably wouldn't touch it at all, because, well, it's fine the way it is. But the spec sort of almost balances itself out by the fact that Bloodsuck is horrible. I'm pretty sure this is one of the worst moves in the entire game. It has a ton of windup, it can be canceled, it can be blocked, it's just bad. And you know what? Even if you hit it, and you have the upgrades for it completely maxed out, guess how much it heals you? Guess. Seriously, take a wild guess. Out of your 400 current max HP, how much do you think you get back? If you guessed 8.8, boy oh boy, you'd be right. So yeah, 8.8 HP, not exactly great. The move in general is just sorta horrible. So if we take a few steps back, if all Vampire had was Vaporization Freeze, Bloodsuck to heal you for 8.8 HP, and Space Ripper Stingy Eyes, we wouldn't have a problem here. I think the spec would be fine if that's the way it was. In comes the Blood Bar, the thing that pushes this spec from probably being pretty fair to incredibly obnoxious and just, I don't have words. First thing about the Blood Bar is that you get it for doing absolutely nothing. You don't need to spend any points, and right off the bat, you get an increased 50 HP. That's how much the default Blood Bar gives you. Now, every single blood manipulation node on the skill tree gives you an extra 10 HP, something that for some reason isn't specified. I wish it was, and that way I wouldn't have had to go through the effort of testing every node, but I did. That means that if you get every single one of these, which for the record, there are 10 of them, for some ungodly reason, you get an extra 150 health. Now mind you, you need 34 skill points to max out this whole thing, so realistically, you're not gonna be able to max it. But if you're running a stand or a build that has low costs, 150 extra health is a lot. That's a lot of damage for someone to have to dish out. But wait, there's more. If you kill somebody, you get 50 blood back, which translates to 50 health, something that no other spec has the ability to do. In 1v1 specifically, you don't get very much time to pose to get some of your health back after you kill someone. But if you're a vampire, you get 50 health back for free. So if you're going up against somebody and you're trading blows, you take one of their stocks and they take one of yours, they automatically get 50 more health than you, just by having vampire. Now thank God that doesn't scale based on how many nodes you have. It's 50 static no matter what, but it's still stupid. It's double stupid when you consider the fact that in main game, if you kill NPCs, you also get 50 blood back. So you can just run away or lead someone into an NPC, kill the NPC, and get all your health back. Meanwhile, they have to go through the painstaking task of waiting an eternity to heal or running away, hiding, and then posing to heal themselves after they're out of combat. So at this point, it's no wonder that there are so many vampire users. If I've explained all this stuff to you and you still don't believe me that this is almost certainly the best spec in the game, I don't really know what to tell you. But the thing is, Vampire is only going to get worse. And this is where we start getting into damage reductions, effective health, and that math thing I was talking about earlier. Oh boy, here we go. First of all, I have it on pretty good authority that the max health is getting lowered from 400 to 300, and if that gets me kicked off the testing team, then so be it. I leaked it. Whoops, my bad. I don't think anybody is really that invested. But this is something that's important to take note of because of how effective health works. But before we get there, I need to talk about the fact that damage reduction is broken right now. It does not work properly. The tooltips on all of the damage reduction nodes read that they give you a 15% reduction, but this is just flat out not true. For Brick Battle and the gun spec, you only get a 13% reduction, and for Haman, for some reason, you get a 17.7 something percent reduction. And I don't know the back end or how this stuff happens, but that's the way it is. And I can prove to you right now that it's broken. King Crimson's M1s deal 10.1 damage. If we take 10.1 and times it by 0.15 or 15%, we get 1.515. So an M1 with reduction should deal 8.585 damage. But it doesn't. It deals 8.73, which is too much. If we then take 8.73 and divide it by 10.1, we get 0.864. And if we take that, times it by 100, and then remove that number that we got from 100, we get 13.56, which is the real reduction that's active right now. Like I said, as it stands, both Brick Battle and Gun have a 13.56 reduction rather than a 15%. I don't know why or how this happened, but that's the way it is. I also tested it with Haman, and like I said, you take 17.7% less damage with Haman charged. Now, I just said all of that for the record, so that way you guys understand some of the math behind this, as well as the fact that I need to highlight it's broken because, well, it isn't working properly. But when we move forward, and to make my life a little bit easier with some of the math, I'm just going to assume with the numbers that there's a flat 15% damage reduction without any of this extra 13%, 17% BS. Now, we need to talk about effective HP. Your effective health is how much HP you theoretically have when factoring in damage reduction. For example, if you have no reductions, your effective HP at 400 health is just that, 400. But with a 15% damage reduction, your effective health goes up to around 470. This is calculated by taking the max HP you have and dividing it by the difference from 1 that your reduction has. To put it in other words, if you have a 15% reduction, you take 1, you minus 0.15 to get 0.85. Now that you have that, you take 400 and divide it by 0.85. That gives you about 470. Now, if you're wondering why I just talked about all this nonsense, it's because the extra effective health gained, in this case 70, is reliant on how high the initial max HP number is. So, to put it simply, the higher HP you have, the more effective your damage reduction is, and the more effective health that you gain. To prove this, if we take 300, divide it by 0.85, you get 352.94. And clearly, 52 extra is less than 70. The problem here? Well, Vampire doesn't work off of reductions. it works off of hard numbers. With the things I already explained, Vampire, at base, with no upgrades, with the 300 HP change, will have 350 HP, making it start off with more effective HP with 0 skill points spent than any other spec with all of their upgrades purchased. I don't really think I need to explain why that's a bit of a problem. Vampire as a whole is just a complete disaster. I think the main issue with Vampire is that it seems like they took YBA's idea of how Vampire should work and just copy-pasted it, which admittedly they did with a lot of things in this game and are currently working to rewrite a lot of that stuff because, as it turns out, YBA doesn't have all the answers. And Vampire, they certainly didn't have the answer. I think a lot of the default passives and stuff like that Vampire has is strictly unnecessary and takes away from the effectiveness of the spec itself. The blood bar in particular is probably the worst thing hands down. This thing is a disaster. When you start off the fight, you're at a massive advantage, and the longer it goes on, the less and less advantage you have, and after a little while, it's basically gone completely and you're just a normal person. Now normally you'd think, well, you need to upkeep that bar, right? But you can't. The only way to upkeep the bar is to kill someone, which is easier said than done, or use your bloodsuck move, which basically does nothing. Remember? 8.8 maxed out? Yeah, not good. So you're effectively trying to manage a bar that you cannot manage. And I don't think any amount of band-aid fixes or anything like that is gonna help with this. I think the bar in of itself is almost a flawed concept. It may seem lame, but I genuinely feel like a complete removal of the bar is the way to go here. Now, what the bar gets replaced with, I can't necessarily say. Do you just take the easy path and make it so that way you have damage reduction just like everyone else, so it's more in line with everything else and doesn't have to jump through all these hoops? Well, if you did that, then you wouldn't have to worry about bloodsuck being ass, because then you could make it so that way it actually heals you for a decent amount of health and doesn't factor in the blood bar at all? Or do you make it so that bloodsuck is basically the way you keep yourself alive, and it's really strong, but if you don't land it, then you're like Swiss cheese? I don't know. I genuinely don't know the answers. I usually don't. I have suggestions, but the right answers are hard to come by. What I do know is that the current system is a disaster and just isn't good. With that though, I am curious to hear what you guys have to say about Vampire. Do you have some sort of solution to the bar problem? Because I'd love to hear it, as right now, well, it ain't good. With that said though, I am done here. So if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like, subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day night wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.